for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today. Today on the show, I've got Ana Villegas. She's the Chief Marketing Officer at NI. NI was previously known as National Instruments. She's a seasoned marketing leader, and we talk about her experience at NI, how she ascended to the CMO role, how the role is defined at NI, which actually is a little bit unique, like many CMO roles across the globe, and includes their corporate impact work, which is related to sustainability, ESG, and the related type of efforts in terms of delivering on NI's purpose. So we go a little deeper into those areas as well and how that manifests itself into the marketplace. And then we talk a little bit about what they're doing in terms of trying to drive diversity within engineering and technology talent, which is a core component of their efforts, and her life lessons as a both successful business leader as well as a woman in trying to drive diversity. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Ana Villegas. Ana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
It's going to be a fun conversation. Now, before we get started, people are going to hear you have an accent. And so I want to hear a little bit about where you're from. But I also hear that the English language, I mean, even for a native speaker, can be extraordinarily difficult. I grew up in the South of the United States, and I think we get picked on a lot of times because we say words that don't really exist, like might, could, and ain't, and all kinds of things. But I hear you have kind of a funny story about that as well.
I definitely have learned the English language and some of the words that have different meanings. And one of the stories I remember, and I still laugh when I remember, is my first year here, I went to a doctor and I was not feeling well. So I went to a doctor. I didn't know this doctor, right? First time meeting this doctor. And she said, well, what are your symptoms? And I said, well, I'm not feeling well. I'm really feeling constipated, very constipated. So she said, okay, why don't you lay down? And I lay down. And then she started patting my stomach and saying, where does it hurt? And I'm looking to her and I'm thinking, I have this on my nose. Why is she touching my stomach? And I said, I didn't realize it at that point. I just said, well, it's really here in my nose. And she gave me a weird look. And basically I realized, I shouldn't have used the word constipated. I should have used the word congested.
Right. Yeah, that I'm glad it didn't go any further. You know?
Yes.
That could have been a very awkward doctor session. Yes. That's hilarious. Oh, yeah, the English language is bizarre, I think. And so many rules, so many different words to sound similar. So, wow. Yeah, I'm glad.
And for the record, in Spanish, you say constipado. Constipado means congested.
Ah, see?
So I was just traducing. I was, like, I'm using the right word here.
Well, that's when the Latin root really doesn't help you much. That's funny. I didn't know they were that close in common. That's funny. I will think twice the next time one of my Latin friends says that.
Or you may say the wrong word next time you go to a doctor because I just brainwash you. Exactly.
I'm gonna say, well, I'm talking about the Latin root. Come on, go back to your training. Don't you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, well, good. I'm glad you glad you guys figured that out quickly. Where is your accent from?
I am originally from Peru, South America.
Nice. Beautiful country. Let's talk about business. You are the Chief Marketing Officer at NI. What was your path to get there? Where'd you start and kind of what were some of the highlights along the way?
So my path started in Peru, where I studied engineering, and I ran into a class around marketing and marketing strategy. It was like an elective. I took it and I just came out of the class saying, oh my God, this is it. I want to do marketing. This is so interesting. So early on, I decided that I wanted to start looking for opportunities in marketing. So I work in a brokerage house. I work in a bank, the largest bank in Peru, for the first 8 years of my career. I was leading marketing, right? And I was having very interesting journey and learnings, but I realized that I wanted to grow and expand my scope. So I decided to come to the US and did my MBA at Kellogg in Chicago. And from there, starting the work at Dell in marketing. And I went through all the different functions and different type of customers you can think about, working at Dell. I did consumer, I did small business, I did medium business. And through my 16 years at Dell, especially the first 5 to 7, the main thing was I will always get opportunities to go to operations or go to the analytics team or go do Latin America. And I'll be like, I want to become a chief marketing officer. And if I go to do analytics, which I can do, right? And I do go into the operations organization. If I go too far away from marketing, it's going to really deviate me from my path. So I will say that I was very focused on where I want to get to. So through this journey, right, Carla actually reached out to me, and very quick funny story here. Carla has reached out to me 8 years before when I was at Dell to work for her in Latin America. And I have told her no, because I was like, I have all this experience in Latin America and I need experience in the US. So I told her no, and I said, oh my God, I just burned the biggest bridge of my life, right? But 8 years later, she reached out again, and she's like, hey, I have a role that I don't think you're going to say no this time to. So can we talk? And I was like, of course, absolutely. So at that point, she was the CMO for NI, and she wanted me to come and build the demand gen function, right? And the operations and the campaign piece. So big part of the marketing organization. So I took the role because I found it super interesting, and also because it put me closer to that chief marketing officer role. I took the role. That first year was crazy because we had to build things from scratch and hire people and do the rebrand and launch the demand generation engine and a lot of things. And after like a year and almost a half, that's when Carla was moving to be the CMO of IBM. And that's where I raised my hand to say, hey, I'm ready to take this role. I've been, building all these pieces. I know the customer, I understand the company and the industry. I'm ready to lead marketing. So went to the interviews and got the role. And it's been an amazing year and a half as the chief marketing officer for NI.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. And just so we use her full name, you when you speak of Carla, you're talking about Carla Pinheiro Sublet, if I pronounce that properly.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. And who has been on the show before as well. I think right around the time you guys launched the NI brand or refresh. But yeah, I enjoy talking to her, and she went on to IBM, and I'm sure she's going to do great things now, whatever role she takes next as well. So, but yeah, no, that's an amazing journey. I mean, and I was at Dell, I interned at Dell, I should say, for a very brief period. Yeah, it was the summer of 2005.
Oh, I was there already.
I know. I was like trying to figure out, I think we were in different groups. I was in the product group and specifically in peripherals, which was not that fun, although I did a project around trying to help them figure out if they should be worried about the iPhone, because the iPhone was
what was your conclusion?
I said, yes, you should be worried about the iPhone. Yes. I think there was a time where, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dell had like an MP3 player, which I can't remember the name of.
Yes, I remember. Mm-hmm.
Like Juke or something like that, maybe. I may have that name wrong, and they were trying to figure out where to go next with it. And I was like, well, you should think about putting phone capabilities in the thing. So anyway, they didn't do it, obviously, but they've done well despite that. So. But anyway, that was a fun time, and I'm sure we know a lot of people in common. But as you think about the CMO role at NI, like how is it designed? Because every CMO, I mean, you probably know this, but the CMO role is kind of like a snowflake. Like there's not exactly the same role at every company. There's always a little twist or nuance depending on the company I talk to. So I'm curious how it's defined at NI.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that I've seen the same, right? Depending on the company, there is the CMO has a piece, but they don't have sometimes all the areas around the customer. So for NI, the CMO role is responsible for brand to demand. So what traditional you will see under a CMO role is a global organization. My organization supports all the business units, all the customers, right? All the regions. So we are not split under the different groups, but we are all centralized. And then also part of my organization, I have all corporate communications. So both external and internal communications and corporate impact. So the ESG and the CSR effort. I have a team who is leading the strategy and, the achieving the goals as part of my organization.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how did the purpose and the ESG components become part of marketing? That's an interesting nuance. And I think it's appropriate for marketing, but I'm curious how it became part of marketing's remit.
So as part of, so this is a company that has been, alive, existed in the market for over 40 years. And they were looking to modernize. And part of modernizing the company was modernizing the brand. But part of modernizing the brand and clarifying the purpose and the values was also defining and building an ESG strategy, a corporate impact strategy. Because it's not that NI hasn't been doing ESG or CSR efforts in the past. They've been doing things since the day they started as a company, but they really haven't put in paper, this is a strategy, and these are the moonshot goals for the next 10 years we're going to commit to externally. So that was part of the efforts my team led as part of the rebrand, was also the corporate impact piece. So we brought a head of a person Tabata Upshaw, who is our head of corporate impact. She reports to me. And we brought her because she had the expertise, having built that in other companies. And we built that team from the ground up. That team didn't exist.
So tell me a little bit more, what is the corporate impact? How do you define that? What does that look like in terms of purpose? And how does it manifest, if you will, out to the marketplace?
So the corporate impact is really the way it's aligned to our purpose, right? And our purpose is to empower engineers to be successful, innovate, and drive the world of the future. So when you think about that and you look at our pillars, we have 3 pillars. Our first pillar is changing the faces of engineering. So diverse representation, diverse leadership, inclusion, STEM education, and STEM volunteering. The second pillar is building an equitable and thriving society. So rewards equity. So we have its balance across employees in similar roles across the organization. Employee well-being, employee engagement, supplier diversity, and initiatives that we will support for equity and economic opportunity through monetary and product donations and volunteers. So that's all part of the society one. And then the third one is engineering a healthy planet. So that's where the green technology, the zero waste, the green building, the climate, and the circular design are all part of this effort. So those are what constitutes our corporate impact strategy. And we have goals for the next 10 years around each of these areas. So we can release every year where we doing versus the goals. That also help us align our grants, our volunteer effort, right? Where the company is investing their time, their money, their employees, their resources, because we all want to support around this goal. So it really becomes your enabler of how you start bringing things or bringing your efforts into market.
Well, and if I remember right from my research around the company, you guys you've taken a different approach to this. I think a more active approach to investing in certain things that align to your purpose. You mentioned the volunteer component, but you've put action and behaviors behind the words, if that makes sense. Maybe more so than other organizations. And the other piece of that I would maybe speak to as well is like NI in itself, like the work that you do to help, like, I mean, your services and products, like they enable engineering to happen, right? Like, so you sit in a very privileged space to help change the face of engineering and educate others as well. I think. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yes, I think we are behind. So the regular consumer will not know about us because they will know about what Intel, Samsung, the big ones are doing, the technology firms, but we are behind enabling that technology to happen. So for the engineers at NI, they are passionate about solving problems of the world. So when they are working on developing products, is okay, how can we develop products that help our customers, right? These businesses drive a better and healthy planet. So they have less waste. So they need less resources. They need less electricity. They have renewables. And all of that is part of the process of how we are building our products, our solutions, and how we're thinking about the roadmap of what's the future, right? What's the R&D? What do we have to solve next? An example that comes to mind that we had an intern during the summer, and he was working in some content around sharing the story of the engineers who were working in the future of electric vehicles and how to charge them. So today, right, electric vehicles, they're amazing. They are, everybody's like, oh, I have an electric vehicle. I'm helping the world. Yes, you're helping the world, but you still need electricity to run. So in a place like Texas, the challenge is that, especially in the summer, right, when we were having our grid was completely at the capacity, you had all these people connecting their electric vehicles and adding more to the capacity of the grid. So these engineers are already working on, okay, what's the future to not use that, because that's not helping the environment, right? How can we use the solar power to charge the vehicle? How can we use the vehicle itself to be able to recharge itself? So it's all these like futuristic things that people are already testing and doing today, so we can solve the problems of the future through building the solutions now.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And you're on the extreme front end of like thinking about how do we solve this next problem that we haven't even thought of yet. Yeah. I mean, because to your point, like EV vehicles are awesome, but then you put them in the context of a hot summer with demand on an electric grid, and you're like, oh, wait. All right, new problem to now engineer our way out of. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, it's really cool work in terms of what you guys do, and I can totally see how the purpose and the corporate impact story and work, frankly, it comes to life. I want to talk a little bit more about your efforts to change the face, I think you said, of engineering, or drive more diversity in engineering and technology. How is that going? And where do you think we are today in terms of that effort?
So there are two main areas. I think when you start thinking about how do I change the faces of engineering to make them more diverse, because when you look at engineering teams, and I'm an engineer, right? So I went to school and it was all males. There were very few women. And in the teams, coming to NI, I saw the same, right? So the company wants to change it. I want to change it. When I'm hiring, I'm like, how do I can help with this diversity piece? But when you look at the pipeline is not huge. So one of the things we realize is it's not only putting the goal and asking our leaders, you have to bring more diverse candidates, right? We have to make sure we're doing the right thing, etc. But it's also impacting and driving the pipeline. And for that is impacting the kids that are in high school, in middle school, right? So so girls can start thinking about following a career in engineering. So one of the things we are doing is we have, announced $2.7 million in grants for STEM education organization. So we can, support, and then it's not only the grant, right? In addition to the grant is also the volunteering. It's very important for NI to always pair it with how can we help these kids, right, learn about the possibilities and the fun on going into an engineering career. So how do it? You bring our own engineers, and they do, they actually build games with them. They work with the Legos, and we support the first robotics, and we support by working and building robots with them, but by building the code, right, volunteering that, going to the event in Houston. So that's just one of the organizations, but basically it's being part of that and showing the younger generations that there is a great opportunity if you go into an engineering career. We also have inclusion resource groups. We call them the IRGs. And we are investing and growing this resource group because we also think that it's not about just from a top down saying, oh, we need to increase the percentage of managers of people of color. But you also need the IRGs to help us, right? Reach into their networks, reach into those areas that sometimes we don't even know they exist, to help bring that talent that is not aware, we are not aware of, and it's like the hidden gems that you want to have. And it's about having our teams have that feeling of inclusion. And we've been doing some inclusion training and helping people feel connected, because that's another piece. You cannot only just say, oh, I'm going to reach this number and that's it. You have to see, hey, are people really seeing a diverse representation? Are people seeing a diversity of opinion? And that's also another piece that's been very important for NI.
No, I love it. I love all those elements. And it's something I haven't told you yet, but I'll tell you now, is my daughter, who's 14, my only kid, so to speak. She thinks she wants to be an aerospace engineer. And
my God.
Yeah. So we're trying to help support that as much as possible. And she's done coding classes like you've described, like all of these like STEM education opportunities that have come around, as well as coding classes. And this past summer, we went international trip, and she did an educational program for a couple of weeks in an engineering camp. So we're doing our little part too here at our house. So,
she needs to visit NI then.
I know she does. She
does.
Go
to the labs. Yeah, she will enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Austin's a great place to be anyway. But yes, we should definitely make a visit out there. We'll see if it sticks, because I think she would be a great engineer, first and foremost. But I also think she wants to be the boss one day. So so we'll see if she stays with engineering, or if she kind of moves into like business, or a hybrid between the two. But we'll see.
Well, I'm offering publicly that I'm happy to talk to her if you want me to at any point.
Well, thank you so much.
Mentor her.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are a successful leader. You're a CMO of a large global company, and you're also a woman. How do you see the role of women in leadership today in business?
Well, I think that the role of women is critical, but in the sense that, they bring a different point of view. They bring a different way of looking at things. And me as a leader, I feel it's my responsibility to help other women, right? To bring other women up, to help promote other women, because we're still not the big percentage. We're still there are not many women CEOs. I think that CMOs, there are more women, but not, still getting into that race is difficult. So as women, we have to support each other and show others that we can make a difference and we can make a big impact, and we need to believe in each other.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, like, within the CMO community, I think we're pretty close to even with men. I think the latest stats I saw, it might have a slight edge actually with women, but don't quote me on that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but pretty close. But we're ahead. And I think all the C-suite functions, all the rest of the C-suite functions are way behind, way behind. And we know the CEO role is even more further behind. But yeah, I agree. And, how do you, when you think about like what it looks like to bring other women along? Like, what does that look like? I'm just curious how that manifests itself, if you will.
So in my case, I am involved in different organizations that, support women. So I'm part of Latinas in Technology. That's an organization here in Austin. Part of the women's magazine, right? I'm very interested in that organization and what they do. And I am in the board of Latinitas, which is an organization for girls in educating them in technology from low-income resources. And so I want to make sure that I volunteer to mentor. So I'm part of a mentorship program called Syriza, where I am paired with somebody who I mentor on a regular basis. And I'm always, open to talking to women and making sure I talk about them. If I see opportunities, right, I bring up from my network, from the people I know, and I sponsor them. I not only just talk about them, but I sponsor them, because there's amazing talent here in Austin, which is where I have a big network. And people just have to know about these amazing leaders.
Yeah. No, bringing them forward through the organization or to other organizations. That's a great way to do it, and mentoring them as well, like you described. I'll have to make sure we link to some of those organizations so other people can get involved if they're interested as well.
Absolutely. And then sometimes it's, speaking up or the white elephant on the room. And this is just, for example, something that happened to me. I was not probably a year and a half ago, I was in a session with my peers and my leader, and we were talking about planning around the talent, right? And it was more a discussion of when you do this succession planning, which is when leaders get together and say, okay, if I were to leave, these are the people in my organization who are ready, or in the next 6 months, who will be ready in the next year, who will be ready in the next 2 years to take my role. So everybody goes to their organization and shows the name. So I went to mine, and then there were 7 more people who went through theirs. All these 7 people were men, and each of them presented their succession planning. So it's at least 7 or 8 names that you have, right? Because people who are ready in 6 months, in a year. So after they all presented, I raised my hand and I said, I don't see any women in any of your charts. I just want to call out, there's a silence. It was like a pin has dropped. Everybody's looking at me. And somebody raised their hand and they said, well, there is no women ready in my team. And I said, well, if you never put them in this list, right? I'm not saying they will be ready in 6 months. Maybe they'll be ready in 2 years. But if you don't bring them up, we're never going to discuss them. We're never going to think about them as a potential successor. So it's just something as simple as that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it makes me think about the Broadway show Hamilton, and I want to be in the room where it happens. You're in the room where it happens, and you can have a huge impact by pulling through the diversity and the inclusion that needs to be happening at that moment in time. So kudos. That's amazing. And you're right. If we don't pull forward or pull through a diverse set of candidates, how will they ever get there? It's just a foregone conclusion at that point. So yeah, that's awesome. I love that example. More people listening to this should be taking notes.
Yes, especially the leaders, the men leaders. Think about your succession planning, and you need at least one woman in that.
Absolutely.
In that plan.
Yeah, well, it's not, we were talking, I set the question up for you to talk about the role of a woman in leading. It's equally, to your point, if not more important for men to speak up and say when they don't see it, because quote unquote, the collective we're always in the room, even if there's no one like yourself in the room. And so we need to do our part as well. So yes, everyone needs to be taking notes today. Well, this has been fascinating. I mean, I'm so interested in kind of how NI is, one, the fact that, this corporate impact piece is inside marketing. I think that's a pretty interesting nugget in and of itself. And then how you're bringing that to life and how it's linked to your purpose overall. Very fascinating with what you're doing. But I love all of the advice that we just went through in terms of like the, how to bring more diversity into the functions, make sure we're nurturing them, make sure that we're succession planning with them in mind. So it's fascinating what you're doing on the business front. One of the things I love to do with people that come on the show, though, is go a little bit deeper on the personal side and get to know you a little bit better. And my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on is, has there been an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
I think that one of the most impactful experiences in my past have been growing up. My grandmother, she was, she was from Peru. She was a person who never went to college. She didn't have that opportunity. She barely finished high school. But even though, she was married and had the kids, she actually co-founded an organization for abused women. And she dedicated her life to help these women. So growing up, when I was visiting her, it was always knocking the door, right? And somebody will appear, maybe somebody with a baby in their hands, and I'm saying, I don't have money to buy milk. And she will just invite them in and give them something, whatever she could get. So she was always helping others, and she was always caring for others, even though she didn't have much. And that was something that stuck with me. And it was something that now that I'm in a position to help, right, and to support others, it's very important. It's basically my core, because you can do it no matter where you are or who you are, if it's in your, in your heart.
Man, what a great story, and a fantastic woman. Holy moly, what a great role model. That's an amazing story. And actually something personal. I don't know that I've ever shared this with listeners, but my grandmother as well, very strong. I'm raised by very strong women. I don't know if it comes through, but like my mom is, unbelievable. My mom's mother, my grandmother on that side, very strong. She actually was in an abusive relationship when she was raising my mother and her brother, and ended up leaving her husband, much like you just described. Your grandmother setting up an organization to help people in that same situation. And luckily she had people that help her along the way, help her get settled. But it is not easy. And it is not easy doing it in whatever the 1960s-ish time frame in the US, and working full time and trying to raise kids. I can't even imagine. So I'm definitely a product of really strong women in my life, and love to hear stories about other ones as well. Well, what advice would you give your younger self if you were starting this journey all over again?
I will say, don't be afraid to speak up. As a diverse person, we need to speak for ourselves and for others. No matter where we are or what we are doing, speak up and make sure people know it. And people know when you see things that are not right, or you see things that are not okay.
I can see your grandmother coming through those words. That's awesome advice. Well, as a marketer, next few questions are a little bit more marketing centric. What do you think marketers need to be learning more about right now? Or maybe it's something you're trying to learn more about yourself.
Here is where I'm saying that there is, big changes happening in marketing. Marketing has always been all around the customer. And when you talk about, what research you're doing, or what's the message, or what's the campaign, it's all about the customer. But if you think about as a company and a company reputation, it's multidimensional. It's the customer, yes, but it's also the employee, right? It's also our vendors. It's also the community. And it's all of those pieces that really make what a company is liked or not, what people believe or not in a company. So as a marketer, I am working very closely with the chief of HR for NI, Kate Prescott, because we are working together in our efforts. We're aligning our efforts, what the campaign that's going for customers, employees are seeing, right? So what are we going to talk about? What are the communications and the topics we need to elevate is very important. The same with the investor relations piece. The same with, in this case, corporate impact is part of my effort. But if you have corporate impact outside of marketing, you still need to be partnering, because it's the community And you want to make sure that message is clear and it's aligned across the different dimensions.
I love that. And I really like how you broke it down. Yes, it's the customer, but it's employees, vendors, community, it's all of it. So, well, are there brands or companies or causes, you follow, you think other people should take notice of?
So I am very involved and I'm in the board of Latinitas. That's an organization here in Austin, but they also have since the pandemic, they have been doing more virtual efforts and classes, and they support girls starting at 9-year-old from low-income families to give them access to learn about technology and also learn about themselves. It's interesting because if you look at the camps they have in the summer, yes, some of the content is about coding, right? And some of the content is about having them exposed to going to a film studio, right? Or they partner with JCPenney to do a fashion collection and how to design that. But there is also classes around how to, believe in yourself, speak, public speaking, present to leaders. Like I've sitting in those panels, and then the girls, 9-year-old, put together a presentation and present to me, which is amazing. And for me, what it's very important is that when you spend time with these girls, right, they come from such a different world that you sometimes forget that world of challenging, right? Parents that maybe they went to college, that they barely are making the day-to-day income is there. And I remember I attended one of the camps. We were volunteering there. I was sitting with the girls, and one of the girls was super excited because she was, I think, turned 11. And for the first time in her life, her parents have afforded to take her to a McDonald's. She said that, and I was like, oh my God, that's why I do this. Because this, they will never have access to other things. They are in a different world. And it's our responsibility to help and to be there and to tell them there is a lot of things, you have opportunities if you want them to go in that direction, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely make sure we link to that organization so other people can get exposed to it as well. It sounds like they're doing phenomenal work. And I love the confidence building that they're doing with classes around believing in themselves and public speaking. It's amazing to me, as I have worked with folks coming from similar backgrounds to the ones you just described, that a lot of times it's just seeing it and being exposed that can help provide the confidence that, yes, I can do that, or even put it on the horizon that it is possible. Like this is something that you can do. And we've talked to a couple of organizations over the years on the show as well that are doing different but similar oriented educational programs. So I love it. Thank you for sharing. Last question for you I have is, as a marketer, what do you feel like is the largest opportunity or threat facing marketers?
I think the largest opportunity for us is to continue to learn and educate ourselves and be agile and keep changing the way we connect with the customers. I know that right now the threat is, right, everything around privacy and the cookie world and, the things are going to change. But people can see it as a threat. I just see it as an opportunity to keep improving. What's the best way to keep our customer engaged? We've gone through hey, let's try social media, right? And the social media bonanza. We've gone through the digital bonanza where everything was supposed to be digital. And now I feel like after the pandemic, we are finally marketing to humans. We're finally getting away from just data and, and numbers and starting to see what these content makes people feel like, right? Do they believe in my company, or are they just going to click because I'm just offering the discount here and it's a one time and never again? So I think that's the opportunity. Just keep learning and talking to others, and also see how you can partner with your chief of human resources, how you can partner with your ESG leader to really build holistic campaigns and not just customer campaigns.
I love it. I love it. And I don't, nothing to add. You said it all. So Ana, this has been an amazing time talking with you and getting an opportunity to chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Alan.
Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me, with support from my team and podcast editors, sound engineers, and writers at Share Your Genius. Find them at shareyourgenius.com. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe on marketingtodaypodcast.com and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love to hear from listeners. You can contact me on marketingtodaypodcast.com. There, you will also find complete show notes, links to what was discussed in the episode today, and you can search our archives. I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.